The Disappearance of Joe Keller, a lost trail in the Colorado mountains. Once upon a time, in the vast and lonely mountains of Colorado, a place of breathtaking beauty where snow-capped peaks rise above vast pine forests and hidden trails. The Conejos County region is remote, wild, and sparsely inhabited, with harsh terrain that has witnessed countless stories, some told, others forgotten in the vastness of nature. Here among the trails of nowhere, a 19-year-old boy vanished without a trace. His story remains an enigma, and the questions, many of them uncomfortable, have yet to be answered. Joe Keller was not just a hiker. He was a son, a friend, a person with a life full of dreams and promise. But fate had in store for him an outcome that no one could have foreseen. In July 2015, Joe traveled with a group of friends to Rainbow Trout Ranch, a retirement ranch located in a remote part of Colorado. It was an adventure trip, a respite from everyday life, a moment to disconnect from the world. On July 23rd, Joe and his friend decided to go for a run on the trails near the ranch. They started the run together, exploring the dirt paths through the trees, enjoying the fresh mountain air. At some point, they separated. His friend returned to the ranch. Joe, on the other hand, never did. This raises the first question: why did they separate? Investigators questioned Joe's friend, trying to piece together the events of that afternoon. Was there an argument? Was anyone else involved? Nothing the friend said was suspicious, but was it investigated enough? Days passed and concern grew. Joe didn't return calls or texts, and the worst began to be feared. A massive search was organized. Rescue teams, sniffer dogs, and helicopters scoured the area, exploring ravines, searching caves, and following any possible trail. But Joe had completely vanished. How could a person disappear without leaving a single clue? Time moved on mercilessly. With no sign of Joe, his family's despair grew. Was it an accident? Did he become disoriented and fall into inaccessible terrain? Or was there something else? Some believed in the possibility of a puma or bear attack, but the sniffer dogs detected no traces of blood or organic remains. The possibility that he had been abducted could not be completely ruled out either. The active search continued for weeks, but finally, with no leads or answers, it was suspended. Joe Keller became another name on the list of missing people in the wilderness. But the mystery didn't end there. Almost a year later, on July 6, 2016, a discovery shook the case. In a remote area of Conejos Canyon, about 4 miles from the nearest road, a hiker found human remains. DNA analysis confirmed it was Joe Keller. His body was in a hard-to-reach area, far from main trails. How did it get there? The terrain was difficult, with dangerous drop-offs and dense vegetation. If it was an accident, why were his belongings not found sooner? How did search teams miss him? More troubling questions arise. Did he really get there on his own, or did someone give him a ride? Was there a hidden crime, or was it simply a tragic misplacement? What was the last thing Joe saw before he disappeared? An autopsy could not determine the exact cause of death. No clear signs of foul play were found, but there was also no evidence of an animal attack. His case remains open. The place where Joe disappeared is no ordinary place. The Colorado forest hides secrets, stories of people who have vanished without a trace, unexplained phenomena that have been documented for decades. Some believe there's something more to these places, something that defies logic, something we can't see but is there. Others think that nature is simply relentless, and that a single mistake can cost a life. The truth is, Joe Keller never returned home. The mountains can be majestic, but they can also be merciless. Never underestimate their immensity. Never walk alone. And remember, when all is silent in nature, something is wrong. The mysterious case of Charles McCullar, a photographer lost in the snow of Crater Lake. Crater Lake National Park in Oregon is a setting of breathtaking beauty and an atmosphere as eerie as it is relentless. Its silent forests and the snow that covers the ground for much of the year have witnessed disappearances that defy all logic. Among them, one of the most disturbing is that of a young photographer who ventured into this frozen landscape and never returned. What was found later defies any conventional explanation. It was January 1975 when Charles McCullar, a 19-year-old young man with a passion for photography, decided to embark on a cross-country trip to capture nature with his camera. A lover of adventure and exploration, his last known destination was Crater Lake, where he left his car at a friend's house in Eugene, assuring them he would only be gone for a few days. He planned to photograph the snow-covered park and return soon, but he never returned. The search began when his absence extended beyond expectations. Rescue teams scoured the park, combed every trail, and explored every corner where he might have sought refuge. But they didn't find a single clue. There were no footprints in the snow, no signs of a fall, no trace of a struggle. It was as if nature had swallowed him up without a trace. Days passed, temperatures continued to drop, and hope of finding him alive faded. Over time, his case became just another unsolved mystery in the long list of disappearances that have occurred in remote areas. But the strangest thing was yet to be revealed. Almost 2 years later, in October 1976, a backpacker exploring a remote area of Crater Lake stumbled upon something unexpected. Among the trees in an area that had supposedly already been surveyed, he found human remains. Upon notifying the authorities, investigators found a disturbing scene. Charles's pants were neatly placed on the ground, as if he were still wearing them, but inside only small bone fragments remained. His socks were still inside them, with remains of his feet still there, but the rest of his body was completely gone. There was no sign of his torso, his head, or any trace of his camera or photography equipment. But the most disconcerting thing was the condition of his clothing, virtually intact. If he had been the victim of an animal attack, the pants would have been torn or scattered around the area, but there were no signs of bites, no traces of blood, and no predator tracks nearby. The area had been covered in snow for most of the year, making the disappearance of the rest of his body even more inexplicable. Theories soon emerged. Some believed Charles may have succumbed to the cold, and that hypothermia caused him to remove his clothes in a state of confusion, a phenomenon known as paradoxical disrobing. However, this does not explain the disappearance of the rest of his body or the pristine condition of his clothes. Others suggest he may have fallen into a crevasse, and the thawing ice swept his body away. But if that were the case, why were his pants still there? And how did he end up in an area that had already been searched without anyone finding him first? This case fits perfectly with the missing 411 phenomenon, documented by David Paulides. People who disappear without a trace, whose bodies turn up later in conditions that defy all logic. Previously searched locations suddenly reveal human remains where there was nothing before. Cases in which the victims show no signs of a struggle or having suffered a common attack, but instead appear to have mysteriously vanished. Charles McCullar entered Crater Lake with his camera, in search of the perfect photograph. But what he found was a fate no one has been able to explain. What really happened in that frozen forest? Was it simply a natural tragedy, or is there something more to these remote places that we still don't understand? The forests and mountains have witnessed stories that defy our understanding. How many more will continue to disappear without us ever knowing what happened to them? If you want to continue exploring the world's most disturbing mysteries, be sure to stay tuned for upcoming videos. Leave your opinion in the comments. What do you think really happened to Charles McCullar? See you in the next story of Mystery and Enigmas.